Cop harasses black waitress in a restaurant. Instantly gets schooled. What if the person who tried to break you is the one who pushes you into your greatest success? Jasmine Edwards moved through the restaurant with the grace of someone who had mastered the art of balancing plates, smiles, and the weight of the world. At 27, she was a striking figure, tall, with warm brown skin and eyes that sparkled with quiet determination. Her braided hair was neatly pulled back, and her uniform was crisp, a testament to her meticulous nature. She was a waitress at the Ivory Room, one of Atlanta's most sought-after dining spots, where the city's elite rubbed shoulders with tourists and locals alike. But beneath her polished exterior, Jasmine carried dreams far bigger than the trays she balanced. She wanted to own a restaurant of her own, a place where food told stories, where people felt seen, where she could carve out a legacy. Jasmine's life hadn't been easy. Raised by a single mother, Tanya, who worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads, Jasmine learned early that nothing came without sweat and sacrifice. She'd spent her teenage years bussing tables at a local diner, saving every penny for culinary school, only to have her plans derailed when her mother fell ill. Instead of pursuing her degree, Jasmine took on full-time work to support her family. The Ivory Room was her proving ground, a place where her charm and work ethic made her a favorite among regulars. But it was also a battlefield, where microaggressions from co-workers and customers alike chipped away at her spirit. Her co-workers, mostly white and from more privileged backgrounds, often dismissed her ambitions. "A restaurant? That's cute, Jasmine," one would say with a patronizing smile. Others whispered behind her back, questioning why she thought she could make it in such a competitive industry. Customers weren't always kinder. Some assumed she was less competent because of her race, others made snide remarks about her appearance or questioned her intelligence. Yet Jasmine endured, her smile never wavering, her focus fixed on the future. Jasmine wasn't just a waitress, she was a force. Her co-workers admired her ability to handle even the most demanding patrons with grace, but they rarely acknowledged it. She had a gift for reading people, knowing when to flash a warm smile or offer a witty quip to defuse tension. Her regulars adored her. Mr. Thompson, an elderly widower, always asked for her table because she reminded him of his daughter. Ms. Carter, a local journalist, tipped generously and often slipped Jasmine articles about black chefs making waves in the culinary world. These small moments fueled her, reminding her why she pushed through the daily grind. But the grind was relentless. Long shifts left her feet aching, and the constant microaggressions, co-workers assuming she couldn't handle complex orders, customers snapping their fingers at her like she was a servant, wore her down. Her mother, Tanya, was her rock. A woman in her late 50s with a sharp wit and a heart as big as Atlanta, Tanya had raised Jasmine to be resilient. "They'll try to dim your light, baby," she'd say, "but you keep shining." Tanya's own dreams of opening a bakery had been crushed by years of financial strain, but she poured her hope into Jasmine, believing her daughter could break the cycle. The restaurant's manager, Marcus, was a wild card. A black man in his early 40s, he'd climbed the ranks in the hospitality industry through sheer grit. He respected Jasmine's work ethic but often stayed distant, wary of showing favoritism. He'd seen her handle tough customers with finesse, but he also knew the restaurant's owners prioritized profit over principle. Complaints about rude patrons, especially powerful ones, were often swept under the rug. Marcus had his own battles to fight, and Jasmine sensed he wasn't always in her corner. Then there was Officer Daniel Hargrove, the cop who'd become a regular at the Ivory Room. In his mid-40s, with a square jaw and a commanding presence, Hargrove carried himself like he owned every room he entered. His badge gleamed under the restaurant's soft lighting, and his uniform demanded respect, or so he thought. To the staff, he was a nightmare. He'd snap at waiters, belittle bussers, and make lewd comments about the female staff, always cloaked in a veneer of charm that made it hard to call out. Jasmine had served him before, enduring his condescending remarks with a tight smile. But tonight, something was different. It was a Friday night, and the Ivory Room was buzzing. The dining room was a sea of elegant tables, crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over linen tablecloths. Wait staff glided between tables, balancing trays of artisanal cocktails and plates of seared scallops. Jasmine was in her element, moving with precision, her smile a shield against the chaos. She'd already handled a spilled wine glass, a demanding influencer, and a table of rowdy businessmen without breaking a sweat. But when she saw Hargrove walk in, her stomach tightened. He sat at his usual table, near the window, where he could survey the room like a king on a throne. His uniform was pristine, his posture rigid, but his eyes carried a glint of malice. Jasmine approached, her notepad ready, her voice steady. "Good evening, Officer Hargrove. What can I get started for you?" Hargrove leaned back, sizing her up. "Well, well, look at you, all dolled up," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Too pretty to be slinging plates, aren't you? Shouldn't you be somewhere better?" Jasmine's smile didn't falter, but her grip on her pen tightened. "I'm happy right where I am, sir. Can I get your drink order?" His smirk widened. "Oh, you're one of those. All sweet and polite, huh? Bet you think you're gonna run this place someday." He chuckled, loud enough for nearby tables to glance over. "Let me tell you something, sweetheart. People like you don't get to call the shots. Stick to serving." The words hit like a slap, but Jasmine kept her composure. She scribbled his order, whiskey, neat, and moved to the next table, her heart pounding. The night wore on, but Hargrove's taunts didn't stop. Each time she passed his table, he'd toss out another barb. "You sure you wrote that order right? Don't want to mess it up like last time. Smile bigger, girl, you're here to make us happy." His comments grew bolder, more personal, laced with racial undertones that made her skin crawl. "I deal with your kind all day," he said at one point, his voice low but cutting. "Always thinking you're better than you are." The restaurant's energy shifted. Patrons began to notice, their conversations quieting as they stole glances at Hargrove's table. Jasmine's co-workers exchanged uneasy looks but said nothing. She could feel the weight of their silence, the unspoken expectation to just deal with it. But something inside her snapped. She'd spent years swallowing her pride, biting her tongue, proving herself over and over. Not tonight. Jasmine set down Hargrove's plate, a perfectly plated steak, medium rare, just as he'd ordered. He barely glanced at it before leaning forward, his voice loud enough to carry. "You know, I'm out here keeping people like you in line every day. You think you're gonna own a restaurant? You can't even handle this job right." The room stilled. Forks paused mid-air. Waitstaff froze. Jasmine felt every eye on her, the weight of their expectations pressing down. But instead of retreating, she straightened, her eyes locking onto Hargrove's. Her heart raced, but her voice was steady, cutting through the silence like a blade. "Sir," she said, her tone calm but unyielding, "I understand you may think you're above others, but let me tell you something you might not know about me." The restaurant was a vacuum, every sound swallowed by the tension. Hargrove's smirk faltered, but he leaned back, arms crossed, daring her to continue. "I'm going to own a restaurant one day," Jasmine said, her voice rising with quiet power. "Not because of the color of my skin, or because of who I know, but because I've worked harder than you could ever imagine. I've spent every day of my life proving myself in a world that constantly tries to put me down. And let me tell you, no amount of arrogance, no amount of rank, is going to change that." A murmur rippled through the room. A woman at a nearby table nodded, her eyes wide with admiration. A man whispered to his companion, "She's got guts." Hargrove's face reddened, his jaw tightening as he scrambled to regain control. "Who do you think you are, talking to me like that?" he snapped, his voice sharp but unsteady. Jasmine didn't flinch. "I'm someone who knows their worth, despite what people like you think. I'm someone who will rise no matter how many times you try to put me down. And as far as your food goes, I'll make sure it's exactly as you ordered, no more, no less." She turned and walked away, her head high, the room erupting in soft applause. Patrons whispered in awe, some pulling out their phones to capture the moment. Hargrove, humiliated, shoved his plate aside, called for the check, and stormed out, his badge no longer a shield. The night could have ended there, with Jasmine's victory a quiet triumph. But fate had other plans. As she returned to her duties, wiping down a table, Marcus approached, his expression unreadable. "Jasmine, a word." Her stomach dropped. Had she gone too far? Would she be reprimanded for standing up to a powerful regular? She followed Marcus to the back office, bracing herself. "I owe you an apology," Marcus said, his voice low. "We've let Hargrove's behavior slide for too long. He's a cop, a regular, and the owners didn't want trouble. But you were right to call him out. You showed more courage than I have in years." Jasmine blinked, stunned. "Thank you, Marcus. I couldn't take it anymore." He nodded, a rare smile breaking through. "I'm promoting you to shift supervisor, effective immediately. You've earned it. And I'm talking to the owners about banning Hargrove. This stops now." The promotion was a shock, but it was only the beginning. Unbeknownst to Jasmine, a patron had recorded the entire confrontation on their phone. By the next morning, the video had gone viral, shared across social media with hashtags like #JasmineSpeaks and #RespectServiceWorkers. The clip showed her standing tall, her words ringing with truth and defiance, and it struck a chord with millions. News outlets picked up the story, praising Jasmine as a symbol of resilience and dignity. Offers poured in, culinary schools offering scholarships, chefs inviting her to collaborate, activists asking her to speak at events. A prominent black restaurateur, inspired by her story, reached out with a mentorship offer. But the most unexpected twist came from Tanya, Jasmine's mother. Watching her daughter's story unfold, Tanya reconnected with an old friend, a wealthy investor who'd always admired her grit. Moved by Jasmine's courage, the investor proposed a partnership, a seed fund to launch Jasmine's dream restaurant. 6 months later, Jasmine stood in the doorway of Jasmine's Place, a cozy, soulful restaurant in the heart of Atlanta. The walls were adorned with photos of her mother's recipes, the menu a love letter to her southern roots. The opening night was packed, with patrons from the Ivory Room, local chefs, and even some of the viral video supporters in attendance. Tanya, radiant with pride, worked the front of house, her laughter filling the space. The restaurant wasn't just a business, it was a statement. Jasmine hired staff from marginalized communities, trained them with care, and created a space where everyone felt valued. Her story inspired a movement, with service workers across the country sharing their own experiences of standing up to disrespect. Hargrove, meanwhile, faced public backlash and a formal complaint from the Ivory Room's management, leading to an investigation into his conduct. As Jasmine looked out over her restaurant, a glass of sweet tea in hand, she thought of that night, the moment she'd chosen to speak her truth. It hadn't just changed her life, it had sparked a fire in others, proving that courage could rewrite even the hardest stories. Jasmine's Place became a beacon in Atlanta, a place where people came not just for the food but for the feeling of being seen. Jasmine's story lived on, not as a viral moment but as a testament to resilience. She never saw Hargrove again, but she didn't need to. She'd already won, not by tearing him down, but by building herself up, plate by plate, dream by dream.